Back under the lights, 2-1-0 team. Somebody's O must go here tonight. Welcome into Countdown to Kickoff, where we bring you into the action. I'm Kurtis Quillin, joined by the head coach of the Copperas Cove Bulldawgs, Tony Johnson. And, Coach, not many ways that you can kick off a season on a better note.
No, thanks for having me, Kurtis, first of all. But, yeah, that was a great win Friday night.
What happened where you guys just kind of clicked and figured it out, kind of down going into the half? You get the Hail Mary and then you pour it on in the second half. What was the play, whether it was that Hail Mary there at the end of the second quarter or something that set it up that just made things click for you guys?
Well, if you remember last time we spoke, I told you they had big play capability, Ellison, and that happened right away, the third play of the game. They hit a home run ball, and our guy thought he had help inside, and he didn't. And so it was just a miscommunication between the corner and the safety, and all of a sudden you're down 7-0. And then it took us a little while to get our offense in rhythm. We had 2 drops that should have been touchdowns by guys that, they're our playmakers, so we got to keep throwing them the ball. And all of a sudden you've got, a situation where you're down a couple scores. So to answer your question, you said what got us back in the game. It was just being methodical, being confident. I was really excited about the poise of our seniors in that game. Just it'll be all right. The conversation you don't hear on the sideline, just talking to each other, it'll be okay, we're all right, hang in there. Nobody really got their head down. Nobody, started pointing fingers. They just knew that, hey, we've made a few mistakes, and we were able to overcome that. I thought our quarterback, Anthony King, was playing great. He hit 2 home run balls that, like I said, should have been caught, and they were dropped by 2 guys he's counting on. So once we hit the Hail Mary, which was a great play by T.J. Holcutt and Mr. Glass, it gave our kids a tremendous amount of momentum.
You talked about needing to weather the storm. It's football in 2024. People are going to score some points. You just got to get on to the next play. To see them do it that well in week 1, does that give you a little bit boost of confidence in that coach's office?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the last game last year where, you're playing a rival and you could have, last game of the season, not going the way you want, you could have just tanked, and they came out and won a big game, and that carried over into the spring and the summer and then into the fall. And so I think I said last week, this particular group of seniors, they're resilient, and they have a knack and a care for each other that's unique. And I think that helps us as coaches because, they're confident. They're confident, and that carries over into the game.
If you take the game itself out and you take the result, 1-0 versus 0-1, it sounds like a cliche, but I also say cliches become cliches for a reason. What's the difference in that when you talk about the mentality of this team heading into week 2?
Oh, it's a tremendous confident booster, right? Anytime you get a reward for having put in, you wait so long to play, right? Football ends, and then you've got winter strength and conditioning, then you've got spring ball, then you've got summer, and then you've got fall camp, and you wait so long to see the result of the fruits of your labor. And so it's huge when you can say, hey, look, everything we've put in, every bit of work, blood, sweat, and tears that we've put in has come to fruition. And that's what week 1 does. And then, I think anytime your athletic programs in the fall can start off successfully, I think that's good for the school. It's good for the community.
We talked about the young guys last week as well, guys who were on that freshman team that you were really excited about last year, who had to contribute, 7 or 8 of them that you named off right off the top of your head. What did you see from those guys that you liked in their first Friday night under those lights?
Well, you're going to see a clip on Adams. Adams made a nice route and had a great touchdown. He's one. Obviously, KJ Ziegler had a nice run late in the game. He's a bigger running back who wants to kind of wear down a defensive line. He's kind of a load to handle. He's different than Cuthbert. And so you saw those guys. Then you saw his cousin Matt go on defense. We didn't expect to play him on defense Friday night. He has been primarily a tight end, but we needed him due to some nicked up things and some adjustments we made in the second half. And you saw him come in and get 2 critical sacks of the Ellison quarterback. So that's just 3 right off the top of my head. There were others. And so, it tells us a lot about our belief in those kids. They still made mistakes like all teenage kids do, and coaches make mistakes too. And so the good thing is you got the win. The bad thing is, we made some mistakes, but all in all, that you have things you can work on and get better at.
What's the the biggest thing scheme-wise, we talked about the mentality of this team, and that's something that will continue to improve as you guys get through the season and they play more games together. Scheme-wise, without giving away your game plan for Leander Glenn tonight, what is one thing you want to see improve pretty quickly, especially with, you've got a 17 district. You're only a few weeks from seeing Quillin High walk into Bulldawg Stadium.
Yeah, no, this week in particularly, we need tackling to improve. We didn't tackle very good Friday night. I didn't think we were very good at tackling and finishing plays on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, other than the first quarter and part of the second, I'd like to see us finish plays and be a little more aggressive up front in the run game. I thought the run game kind of stalled a little bit in the first quarter. But then again, we only ran the ball 6 times in the first half. We threw the ball a ton because they were bringing 6- and 7-man pressures. So it's the game within the game, if you will. But the tackling definitely has to improve for sure. And then just some little things on special teams like being at your landmark, being where you're supposed to be. Guys not remembering they're on extra point. You saw 1 or 2 kids run on late. Just remembering that, hey, just because you played a whole series on offense doesn't mean you're not on special teams. And so, again, it's little things like that are going to eventually get cleaned up and be better for us down the road.
I'm one of those people, I don't like asking talk about questions, but I'm going to ask you a talk about question. Talk about Anthony King Friday night. What you saw from him, what you loved, what you want to see him work on as you guys get set for it.
I'll tell you exactly what we talked about in our meetings over the weekend. And we've had this conversation other times as well. His poise, his leadership is dramatically different than it was 2 years ago, way different than it was a year ago. And I attribute that to his maturity and his growth and his confidence in himself and his belief in himself. He is I said this last week, he is a changed young man. You saw it in the first quarter with the 2 drops. I mean, he threw 2 great balls. I mean, he had a great game. Those should have been big touchdowns for him. And those are his friends. Those are his teammates. Those are his brothers. Those guys don't want to drop passes. Nobody wants to drop the ball. But you saw his, he clapped. He's a competitor, right? So he clapped his hands and kind of did like that. But there was no hanging of his head. He was talking on the sideline. You guys got this. You guys will be okay. So the leadership attributes from him have been off the chart so far this year.
When we come back, we're going to dive into the Bulldog offense and the matchup itself with Leander Glenn. You're listening to Countdown to Kickoff on Bulldog Radio. Back on Countdown to Kickoff, you're listening to Bulldog Radio. Kurtis Quillin alongside the head coach of the Copperas Cove Bulldogs, Tony Johnson. And Coach, all right, let's talk about the matchup. We're going to talk about the Bulldog offense and the Leander Glenn defense. I mean, what is it about this matchup that you like?
Well, we only have a small sampling, right? We have one game that they played last Friday, and then we have their scrimmage versus Ellison. So we do have a common opponent, albeit a scrimmage. And, with a scrimmage, those are controlled, 20 plays here, 20 plays there. There's really no 3-and-outs, no special teams involved. So we have a small sampling of what they do. From an offensive standpoint, I like our matchups on the back end. When I say that, I'm talking about their corners and their safeties versus our skill wide receivers. Again, I do believe there are some opportunities again we have 2 elite guys and we have 5 guys that can play at any time at receiver, and I do believe we can exploit them on the back end. Their strength is their front. They have a good D-line. They're aggressive. They like to blitz, which is what we saw last week. So we've been working a lot of blitz pickup this week. But that's where I think, again, we have an advantage. We do have to develop a run game, though, and we have to develop that early because offensively what they do is impressive when they have the ball. So we have to keep drives alive. We have to sustain some drives ourselves, and then we have to come away with points.
Last week, Glenn goes down to Castroville near the San Antonio area, 21-7 win over Medina Valley. Now, that's a Medina Valley team that's brand new to 6A ball, first game as a 6A school. How you talked about week 1. How much are you able to glean from that, knowing what Medina Valley's done decades past, but them being new to the state's largest classification?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Medina Valley's a well-known program and highly successful. And yes, when you do move up from 6A from 5A, there are going to be people that tell you there's not much difference, but reality is there is. And so It is hard to really gauge that, but I go back to that scrimmage with Ellison, and I tend to watch that again because of the common opponent. What this team does, if you're a common fan and you don't know anything about football, Leander Glenn runs a slot T offense. They had a 7-minute drive against Medina Valley with points. They had a 9-minute drive in the third quarter. That is entirely tough to swallow when you're an offense and you watch your defense stay outside on the field for 9 minutes. They hide the ball. They pull everybody every play. That's trickeration. It is the best example. If you're not familiar with slot T, it's Army Navy with a wing. And so they're running that offense and they're running it down your throat, and they're big up front. And their desire is to win a 21-13 game. Their desire is to win a 28-14 game, a 28-21 game. That's the kind of game they want to win. If you look up and they are getting the ball and taking 7 minutes and 9 minutes, that I'm telling you, the game will be over at 8:30. That might make the common fan happy, but that's what they want to do. They don't want to throw the ball. What you want to do against teams like this, it's the old, in the 80s, it was Nebraska and Oklahoma with the wishbone. Let's get them behind. They can't come back and win because they're a run-oriented offense. That's the same philosophy here. We've got to get them behind, make them throw the ball. They've thrown the ball maybe 6 times in that game last week. That's not their desire to throw it. And so this is going to be, I think, a key point here in this game is going to be the special teams field position part of it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be that, and it's going to be a game where if we don't tackle, you're in trouble. And so we've got to really, really have a great game plan defensively, but offensively, we've got to come away with points when we have the ball.
With that defense playing complementary, and to your point, Friday night's game against Medina Valley, 2 hours, 16 minutes from opening kickoff to the final whistle. How important is it to take care of the football, whether it's in the run game, whether it's making sure if you're going to throw the ball that it's somebody in a blue jersey who catches it and not in a white jersey?
And that's super important. And I think it goes back to, last week we didn't have any turnovers. We had no procedure penalties out of the O-line. Those are things that are telling you that you have a smart football team that's not making those critical little errors that set you behind the chains. So, yeah, hanging on to the ball. We'd like to go on, a long drive too ourselves. And if they're going to go on a long drive, we got to give them a short field. We cannot give them the ball at the 7-8 yard line and allow them to go, 90 yards and kill 8-9 minutes of the clock. That'll be detrimental to us.
When you look at your own offense matching up against this, who are guys who have to step up and whose matchups against what you see on film you really like?
Again, I think any one of our skill players against their back end, and again, common opponent. Ellison in the scrimmage was able to get behind their DBs all night long in the scrimmage. So hopefully we can have that same success when we play them. So for us, the matchups are leaning towards the receivers, but the old Woody Hayes quote, when you throw the ball, 2 bad things happen. It's either intercepted or dropped. Yes, the catch could be the positive, right? But we do have to establish the running game. I know I've said that a couple of times now in this interview, but we can't just get back there and throw it all the time. So the matchups are the receivers, obviously, again, against their back end. And then I would say our offensive line taking on a very stout front.
How much does the physicality of a team like Ellison that you guys have played before and what they produce help you when you step into this matchup against Glenn and in district, Georgetown next week, Del Valle in 2 weeks, and then you've got district ball after that?
Everybody we play's got talent. That's 6A football, 5A football. There's talent on the field. Everybody has talent. Ellison had a great game plan. I give their kids a lot of credit. They came out hungry. They came out focused. They were a problem up front, as we talked about last week, that they would be, And so for us, we've got to match that intensity earlier than we did last week against this team, because these kids, while I don't know that they're as equally talented as Ellison athletically, I think they're a better intelligent group in terms of they've been in this system since junior high. They haven't moved around a lot. They are Leander Glenn kids from 6th grade on and running this offense and this defense.
When we come back, we're going to talk the other side of the ball. We'll talk the Bulldog defense and the Grizzly offense when we return. You're listening to Countdown to Kickoff on Bulldog Radio. We're back on Countdown to Kickoff. You're listening to Bulldog Radio. Kurtis Quillin alongside the head coach of the Copperas Cove Bulldogs, Tony Johnson. And, Coach, when's the last time in 6A ball you played a team that huddled every single time they touched the football?
Probably about 2 years ago, we played Arnold Turner, who runs the same offense. So, yeah, I've seen it. When it's working, it's working. When it's bad, it's bad. So there's no middle ground with this type of offense. So, yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Let's dive right into it. What is the biggest thing that your defense is getting? What's the biggest thing you and Coach Evans are preaching to your defense this year with such a different offense from what they've seen since you've been in Copperas Cove?
Well, I've watched it for the last few days in practice. It's not been pretty, so we got to get better at tackling. We've got to get better at reading the slot and reading the keys and finding the football and hitting the quarterback in the mouth every play, because the quarterback's going to take you to the ball. A lot of times you see these slot teams on the toss, especially. He's the leading blocker. He's tossing that ball and getting up in the gap and leading, blocking for those guys. So for us, it's popping him in the mouth every time. It's reading those keys, reading those guards as they pull. You completely have to change your front. You have to bring more people into the box to stop this type of offense. They do tackle over. They do double tight. They have the nasty slot. They have the slot with a wing. They have a slot with a receiver. And it's all kinds of funky stuff back there in the backfield. So football purists will love it from their standpoint, but we certainly have had our hands full all week. Freshman, JV, and varsity, trying to teach our guys with the limited time we have to work on something like this. And I think that's why teams run this, right? Because you don't have a lot of time to prepare for something like this. So might have been a better matchup week one than now, because we would have had all summer. But we got to go, right? So that's what it's been this week for our defense.
This is an offense. I mean, your DBs aren't going to see a ton of passing if the stats hold true from a week ago. They attempted 5 or 6 passes. They only completed 3, but it's still an offense capable of the chunk play. So
like I said earlier, if you can somehow take advantage of them and be up on them and force them into throwing situations where they do tend to put 2 wide receivers out or flex a tight end out, that's to our advantage. That's not what they want to do. That's not what they work on. It is a lot of play action passes, as we talked about earlier. They do have some nice kids that can catch the football, but they want to run the ball down your throat and make you like it, 3, 4 yards, 5 yards. And make you eat that clock. So for us, our DBs have to stay awake. I was telling our corner, James Marshall, yesterday, you got to stay awake, man, because he's out there with one guy the whole practice, and he's just in his face the whole practice. And he looked at me and he said, "Coach, this is boring." I said, "Yeah, that's the moment you start saying this is boring is when they're going to throw one over the top on you." So getting those kids to understand, stay alert, again, reading keys, understanding what situational football, 3rd down and more than 5. There's a good chance you might get a play action pass here. You might not. They threw the ball, I think it was 5. It might have been 6, 5 times and completed 3, as you said. Longest completion was 17 yards. So they're capable of getting what they need when they need it. Where we tend to be more of a big strike offense. They are a methodical, beat you up offense.
Is this one of those that this has the chance to be a little bit lower scoring than what you guys saw last week? Well, even if you guys get the win, you could still be talking about a game that doesn't get out of the 20s.
You could. I mean, if we don't do what we're supposed to do on defense and you look up and it's the second quarter and you haven't touched the ball, it could. So, those are things we talk about, and those are things we're trying to make sure doesn't happen, right? But, again, we're capable offensively if we have opportunities to put up big points with our offense.
What's the aside from the schematic difference between this and anybody else you're going to play this year? I mean, 10 games on your schedule, 9 of them are against spread teams, and then you've got this week with Leander Glenn. What's the biggest difference aside from the schematic challenge that your kids are going to see this week? Is it the heavy reliance on the run? Is it the physicality of the front of the offensive front, or is it the way they pass the ball in the rare circumstance that they actually go to the air?
I think well, I'll answer your last question first. I think we would be better equipped if they had to throw the ball to that. Obviously we've had to change our front and move guys into the box that aren't normally traditional box players. We've got to, do different things to their tackles as opposed to, being aggressive. We've got to what I call jack up a tackle now. You can't let tackles get off onto linebackers. You can't, with guard pulls, you've got to get into his hip. You've got to change a lot of little things. So for me, the biggest concern is their offensive line. They've got, I think some are 70 or 77. I think it's 77. Their offensive line is, really 77. Last name Franks. I mean, he's a huge kid. I mean, he's as big as anybody we've got. And they like to run behind him. I mean, so when it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you can pretty much find Mr. Franks. He's their left tackle. He's a massive human being. But their other kids are athletic and physical, tend to be a little on the stockier side, the 6'1", 6'2", 250-pound kid that can run. And so we've got to be physical on our D-line and not play on our line of the scrimmage. We've got to play on their line of the scrimmage to force that bubble when that quarterback pulls out and wants to run his veer look or his slot look, or we have to be able to bubble that their offensive line so that we can create gaps.
We spend a lot of time talking about the different offense because it is going to look different than teams who have come into Bulldog Stadium in a while. But at the end of the day, your defense is out there. This is a defense you just talked about. They were able to move on to the next play in a game that was back and forth Friday night against Ellison. How important is it to see that going into a game like this Friday, like Leander Glenn, where schematically you're taking a total turn from what they've seen, and now you've seen they have the patience to be able to put one play behind them and move on to the next down.
Well, I think again it goes back to what I said, referencing when you were asking me about Anthony King. There are some great seniors on this year's ball club that are great leaders, and we're talking defense. So you talk about Tacklebaum, right? You talk about Colin Herman. You talk about Davion Phillips. There are some great leaders over there on that defense. Tuias Sopo, another one, that calm those kids down and get them refocused. And, I think they are capable to move on to the next play because of who they are character-wise. So they match the same intensity as those offensive guys. And so the hard part is taking something they've done their entire high school career and now having to tweak things, if you will, to play this type of offense. And are we going to be able to do that to slow this offense down and even stop it? That's going to be the challenge. And then I think they'll rise to the occasion. You saw last week down, 2 scores quickly. They could have folded. They didn't. 3 years ago, we would have folded. We don't fold. And so I think that you have that. And so I think that's going to help us. Now, what's really the key to this game, other than that, is and them being able to pick up quickly on the keys of this offense, is in-game adjustments by the coaches. Can they make in-game adjustments when we see things? Because obviously Leander Glenn is well coached too, and they're preparing for us. Mm-hmm. And so when you play a slot T, I was on a staff one time that ran this. We ran more of a Army-Navy offense, but one of the things we always did when we were doing that was we didn't care what front you had. We had block down, kick out, block down, kick out, block down, kick out. That was our scheme. It didn't matter who was there. So I would imagine they're much the same. Doesn't matter what. So we have to mix and move our defensive front quite a bit to confuse them. Talked to a lot of successful coaches that have ran this offense this week from other schools, trying to say, what gives you problems? What bothers you? And the commonality is never being still, never being in the same thing over and over again. Because if you're dead. Our kids they block down, kick out. That's it.
And if you're talking about local schools, that run this, it's few and far between. The only one that I can think of nearby, like within a 40-minute drive of here, would be Alan Hare and whatever school he's at. Yeah, he ran it at Salado. He's at Gerald now. He was at Chaparral when he opened that school. And so it's an offense that's harder to come by in this area of the state because of the athletes we have.
No, 100%. Jack Alvarez ran a variation of it, obviously, when he was here. He ran it at Ennis. I did talk to Alan Hare quite a bit. Still talking to Alan about stuff. So the former coach Kent Jackson at Seminole ran this successfully. So we've been on the phone with a lot. We actually called Medina Valley. So help us. Tell us what you did that caused creation, some confusion, to help us be creative in stopping this.
When we come back, it's the final 3 keys to the matchup tonight as the countdown to kickoff comes toward a close. You're listening to the Countdown to Kickoff on Bulldog Radio. Back to wrap things up on Countdown to Kickoff, Kurtis Quillin alongside Tony Johnson, the head coach of the Copperas Cove Bulldawgs. Coach, let's get right down to it. The final time you address your guys in the locker room before you run out tonight, what are the three main keys to this game that you're gonna reiterate to them?
Our interior lines have to be physical and punch them in the mouth, offensively and defensively. We have to hit them. We have to push them around, not get pushed around. And that's on both sides of the ball. Protect the ball is always key. The ball's ours. So protecting the ball, which we did a great job of that last week. And then definitely we have to win the special teams battle. We have to be creative in special teams as well to keep possessions and or steal possessions. So it's an exciting week. It's been an exciting week for our special teams. They're having a good time. But we've got to do some creative things special teams-wise to keep them from having the ball if they're having the success that they want to have, and hopefully, we come out and do those things, and we'll be victorious.
What would it mean to extend your winning streak from 2 to 3?
Anytime you can win, right? It's the gift that keeps on giving, right? So, that's what the kids play for. That's why we're there. That's why there's a scoreboard on the stadium. So, it would mean everything for our kids to get another win. They want to win every time they go out. So, they're competitors. The coaches are competitors, and we understand this is a good football team, and we're excited to get the opportunity to play them.
Well, Coach, thank you for your time. Good luck tonight.
Thanks, Kurtis.
For producers Cole Witter and Matt Thompson, I'm Kurtis Quillin saying thanks for joining us on Countdown to Kickoff. After this, we'll send it back to the Big Joe Lombardi radio booth where Russ Cochran, Ben Pettit, and the crew have you covered for Kickoff.